handful of big corporations dominate every aspect of our lives. That may seem exaggerated, but from the breakfast we eat to the mattress we sleep on and everything we wear and consume in between is largely dependent on these corporations. Those are huge investment companies that determine the course of money flow. They are the main characters of the play that we are witnessing. How does it work? Let's take PepsiCo as an example. It is the parent company of many soda companies and snack companies. The so-called competitive brands are from factories from a few corporations who monopolize the entire industry. In the packaged food industry, there are a few big companies, like Unilever, the Coca-Cola company, Mondelez and Nestlé. In the picture you see that most brands in the food industry belong to one of these corporations. The big companies are on the stock market and have the big shareholders in the board of directors. On sources like Yahoo Finance, we can see detailed company info such as who the biggest shareholders actually are. Let's take PepsiCo again as an example. We see about 72% of stock is owned by no less than 3,155 institutional investors. These are investment companies, investment funds, insurance companies, banks, and in some cases governments. Who are the biggest institutional investors of PepsiCo? As you can see, only 10 of the investors own together nearly 1/3 of the stock. The top 10 of investors together amount to a value of $59 billion. But out of those 10, only 3 own more stock than the other 7. Let's remember them and look up who owns the most stocks of the Coca-Cola company, the biggest competitor of Pepsi. The biggest lump of stock is again owned by institutional investors. Let's look at the top 10 and start at the bottom 6 of them. 4 of these institutional investors we also saw at the bottom 6 of PepsiCo. These are Northern Trust, JP Morgan Chase, Geode Capital Management and Wellington Management. Now let's look at the 4 biggest stock owners. They are BlackRock, Vanguard and State Street. These are the world's biggest investment firms, so PepsiCo and Coca-Cola are not competitors at all. As possible, I only showed you the tip of the iceberg. If you decide to research this with the sources I just showed you, then you will see that most popular insurance companies, banks, construction companies, telephone companies, restaurant chains and cosmetics are owned by the same institutional investors we have just seen. These institutional investors are mainly investment firms, banks and insurance companies. In turn, they themselves are owned by shareholders, and the most surprising thing is that they own each other's stocks. Together they form an immense network comparable to a pyramid. The smaller investors are owned by larger investors. Those are owned by even bigger investors. The visible top of this pyramid shows only 2 companies whose names we have often seen by now. They are Vanguard and BlackRock. The power of these 2 companies is beyond your imagination. Not only do they own a large part of the stocks of nearly all big companies, but also the stocks of the investors in those companies. This gives them a complete monopoly. A Bloomberg report states that both these companies in the year 2028 together will have investments in the amount of $20 trillion. That means that they will own almost anything. Bloomberg calls BlackRock the fourth branch of government because it's the only private agency that closely works with the central banks. BlackRock lends money to the central bank, but it's also the advisor. It also developed the software the central bank uses. Many BlackRock employees were in the White House with Bush and Obama. Its CEO Larry Fink can count on a warm welcome from leaders and politicians. Not so strange if you know that he is the frontman of the ruling company. But Larry Fink does not pull the strings himself. BlackRock itself is also owned by shareholders. Who are those shareholders? We come to a strange conclusion. The biggest shareholder is Vanguard. But now it gets murky. Vanguard is a private company and we cannot see who the shareholders are. The elite who own Vanguard apparently do not like being in the spotlights. But of course they cannot hide from who is willing to dig. Reports from Oxfam and Bloomberg say that 1% of the world together owns more money than the other 99%. Even worse, Oxfam says that 82% of all earned money in 2017 went to this 1%. To clarify the picture, I have to explain briefly what non-profits actually are. These appear to be the link between companies, politics and media. This conceals the conflicts of interests a bit. Non-profits, also called foundations, are dependent on donations. They do not have to disclose who their donors are. They can invest the money in the way they see fit and do not pay taxes as long as the profits are invested again in new projects. In this way, non-profits keep hundreds of billions of dollars among themselves. According to the Australian government, non-profits are an ideal way of financing terrorists and of massive money laundering. The foundations and funds of the families that are the richest stay in the background as much as possible. For issues that get much attention, the foundation of philanthropists are used that are lower in rank but very rich. I want to keep it short, so I will show you the three most important ones that connect all industries in the world. They are the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Open Society Foundation of the controversial multi-billionaire Soros, and the Clinton Foundation. I will give you a very short introduction to show you their power. According to the website of the World Economic Forum, the Gates Foundation is the biggest sponsor of the WHO. That was after Donald Trump quit USA financial support to the WHO in 2020. So the Gates Foundation is one of the most influential entities in everything that concerns our health. The Gates Foundation works closely with the biggest pharma companies, among which are Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, BioNTech and Bayer. And we have just seen who their biggest shareholders are. Bill Gates was not a poor computer nerd who miraculously became very rich. He's from a philanthropist family that works for the absolute elite. His Microsoft is owned by Vanguard, BlackRock and Berkshire Hathaway. But the Gates Foundation, after BlackRock and Vanguard, is the biggest shareholder in Berkshire Hathaway. He was even the member of the board there. We would need hours if we wanted to uncover everything in which Gates, the Open Society Foundation of Soros and the Clinton Foundation are involved. They form a bridge to the current situation, so I had to introduce them. We need to start the next topic with a question. Someone like me, who never makes videos, can with an old laptop objectively show that only 2 companies hold a monopoly in all industries in the world. My question is, why is this never talked about in the media? We can choose daily between all sorts of documentaries and TV programs, but none of them cover this subject. Is it not interesting enough? Or are there other interests at play? Wikipedia again gives us the answer. They say that about 90% of the international media is owned by 9 media conglomerates. Whether we take the monopolists Netflix and Amazon Prime, or enormous concerns that own many daughter companies like Time Warner, the Walt Disney Company, Comcast, Fox Corporations, Bertelsmann and Viacom CBS, we see that the same names own the stocks. These corporations not only make all the programs, movies and documentaries, but also own the channels on which those are broadcast. So not only the industries, but also the information is owned by the elite. The daily news of all these media outlets, the diverse news media, do not produce news. They use information and footage from the press agencies ANP and Reuters. These agencies are not independent. ANP is owned by Talpa, John de Mol. Thomson Reuters is owned by the powerful Canadian Thomson family. The most important journalists and editors working for these agencies are a member of a journalism agency like the European Journalism Centre. These are one of the biggest European sponsors of media-related projects. They educate journalists, publish study books, provide trainee spaces and press agencies, and work closely together with the big corporations Google and Facebook. For journalistic analysis and views, the big media use Project Syndicate. This is the most powerful organization in the field. Project Syndicate and organizations like I mentioned are together with the press agencies the link between all worldwide media outlets. When news anchors read from their audio cues, chances are that the text stems from one of these organizations. That is the reason that worldwide media shows synchronicity in their reporting.
One-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.